That's the name of my show. What's up, everyone? This is Chris McGlynn, host of Draft Season Never Ends, bringing it back for the first time in a long time. And I'm excited to be here. I've been looking forward to doing this for a really long time. Wanted to get back into the podcast game. Haven't really been doing a whole lot recently. So this is my first step back into it. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube now, we have a YouTube version of the show for the first time ever. So this is just kind of my way of getting back into these podcast games, seeing what's out there, and just kind of getting a chance to talk about some of the stuff that's coming up in the NFL draft. That's what this show is going to be all about all the time. My goal right now is going to be posting on every Friday, so make sure you keep an eye out for Friday posts, and we're going to go from there. It's been a huge and busy couple of weeks in the NFL, and there's been so many implications on what's going to come next for the draft. And I just want to get into it a little bit. I think we're going to do a quick mock draft today to kind of kick things back off, run through picks. I'm going to go a little bit of a different approach as well, kind of taking a look at what I would do here rather than what I think necessarily will happen on draft day when that comes up just about 34 days from now as I'm recording this. So we're getting close, really not that far away anymore. But we're going to take a look at that. And we're going to just dive into it right now. Let's start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, most people here at this point are projecting Aiden Hutchinson to just go number one overall. And I understand that, right? He's a great prospect, a fantastic motor. There's a lot to like about him. But I think a lot of that is because the Jaguars franchise tagged Cam Robinson. And I don't love Cam Robinson to begin with. And that means that he's probably going to be gone after next season. Can't say that Jawaan Taylor is the long-term answer at right tackle either. So in this case, I'm actually going to take Evan Neal here, offensive tackle out of Alabama. He's got experience on both right and left tackle. I think he's the best fit. I think he's probably the best prospect in this draft, to be completely honest. I really love Neal. He's huge. He tested well. He moves super well on film. And if you're serious about protecting Trevor Lawrence and making this guy successful down the line, you got to give him a franchise left tackle. I don't think Cam Robinson is that. So for this season, yes, it gets a little bit tricky as to what do you do with Jawaan Taylor and Cam Robinson. Well, both those guys are in contract years. Maybe you can trade one of them. That's a thing that I'm willing to live with. There's going to be edge rushers available in the second round. This is a really, really deep edge rusher draft. I don't know that we're going to have anyone as close, or the gap between the top tackles and the top edge rushers to me is different. The gap there is much more significant when it comes to the tackles. You get past these top two, and I think you drop off a bit. There's a couple of really good edge rushers that could be there still at the top of the second round. All right, and with that, let's get to Aiden Hutchinson and when he lands. He's actually going to stay very close to home. The Detroit Lions at number 2 take Aiden Hutchinson, give them a bona fide pass rusher that they can work with on the outside. Very great physicality. What's one of the things that I really love the most about Hutchinson is he's not afraid of contact. He seeks it out in a lot of ways. And so I just think this makes a tremendous amount of sense for the Lions. I don't need to elaborate too much more on this than they need an edge rusher. He's the best one on the board. We go from there. Number 3, the Houston Texans. There's a lot of different directions I can see the Texans going here. It seems like they're pretty set with Davis Mills for the time being at quarterback, at least for this year. They're going to give him a chance to be the starter. Now, an interesting thing, I'm going to actually just tie this in here too. Daniel Jeremiah, I was just listening to his podcast, Move the Sticks, the other day, and he mentioned on there that he believes that Mills would have been the first quarterback taken in this draft had he been eligible. So that's just some food for thought there. It's definitely a really interesting one. So let's go with Kayvon Thibodeau here. I know that we've definitely not seen the draft hype around him build in the last couple of months, but I still really am high on Thibodeau. I think he's the second best edge rusher in this class, a top 5 prospect. He's definitely got to work on the consistency a little bit, but the physical tools are there. The production is pretty impressive over the course of his whole college career. And there's a lot to like when you look at his film. It's impressive for sure. Now let's go to number 4, the New York Jets here. First of 2 top 10 picks for the Jets. This, to me, is a slam dunk pick. You take Ahmad Gardner here and you don't look back. He is a long, athletic, physical corner, something the Jets desperately need. I know they signed DJ Reed in the offseason here, but I don't think that's quite enough here, honestly. I think he's a great number 2 corner. That you've already got Bryce Hall there, but I think you just got to continue to build that secondary. And Gardner is a true number 1 lockdown corner, and will develop into that in the NFL over the course of time. I know there were people who said, "Oh, you don't know about his speed, given the size." He ran more than well enough at in that 40 in the NFL Combine for me to feel confident taking him in the top 5. I think this is going to be a fantastic pick for the New York Jets. Number 5. We've got the New York Giants here, staying in New York. And this is a no-brainer for me as well. Ikem Ekwonu, offensive tackle from North Carolina State. Just got to take the guy here, right? You need to protect Daniel Jones. The Giants have said that they've done everything to screw this guy up. Go out and get a physical, mauling tackle who can play on either side of the line and will give you bookends along with Andrew Thomas to work with going forward. I think this is just the best draft strategy right now. Plus, like I said with the Giants also have 2 top 10 picks that will be back up again in just a second. So Ekwonu is the pick at number 5. Number 6, Panthers selecting here. This is where I think we're going to see the first quarterback come off the board. And I really like Malik Willis. I think he is the most physically talented quarterback in this class. I love the arm strength. I love the accuracy down the field. He's got a lot to work on, right? He's not very polished when it comes to pocket presence and footwork and a lot of those other kind of more nuanced things in the NFL. He's got work to do. There's no question about that. That being said, I don't think Carolina is really in a position where they feel like they have to go all in this year. I think they just need to show some signs of progress off of a disappointing 2021 season. So with Willis under center, I think that buys Matt Rule a little more time, and I think you get a chance to really see what will come of him here. So I like Willis to the Panthers at number 6. I think he's the best quarterback in this class, kind of head and shoulders above the rest. And at the end of the day, if I'm the Panthers, I need a quarterback. I don't trust Sam Darnold. I don't trust Cam Newton. I'm taking Malik Willis here and betting on the upside and the fact that hopefully we'll be able to develop him over time into a player who's on the level of maybe, I don't know if he's going to reach Lamar Jackson level. I don't think he's got quite that same athleticism. But, I mean, he's mobile. He's got a live arm. There's a lot to like about Malik Willis here. He could be definitely, I think, top end of the league starter, somebody that you could feel pretty good about winning you playoff games in the future. Number 7, the Giants back on the clock. Told you it wouldn't be long. I'm going to go with Kyle Hamilton here. He is one of those polarizing prospects in this entire draft class. He is a super talented safety, but a lot of the questions kind of come up from where do you draft the top safety in the class? Is he worth a top 5 pick? Is he worth a top 10 pick? Especially when you look at recent years and you see, Jamal Adams didn't quite pan out the way the Jets had hoped for. Obviously, they netted a huge return, but I don't think that means that it was a good decision with the Jets to draft him at number 6. I think it just means it was a bad decision by Seattle to give up 2 first-rounders for him. So, I think there's a lot to take away from that. You go back, Eric Berry was the last safety that we saw taken in the top 5. That was back in 2010. So it's been a long time since we've seen a safety kind of reach those heights. But I think for the Giants, they need some help on the back end. This is a dynamic playmaker who is just super smart, knows where he's got to be on the field at all times. He's not an elite athlete, but he's got great size, he's physical, and he's got enough range. When you watch him on film, he plays faster than his 40 time would indicate. So I wouldn't read too much into the 40 time. I think he'll be fine in the NFL, and I think this would be a really solid pick for the Giants, somebody who's got Pro Bowl potential and somebody who could really step in and make a difference for them, both in the run game because he's so physical and he's so big, and in the pass game because of his range and his coverage skills. Number 8, the Atlanta Falcons. Man, the Falcons, I don't know what the Falcons are going to do at this point. Matt Ryan is gone. They bring in Marcus Mariota. It's way too early for another quarterback to come off the board for me here. So I'm actually going to go with my top receiver in this draft class, and to me that's Drake London. I think he is just going to be somebody who's a contested ball fiend. He's got great hands. He's got super long arms. He's actually a very good route runner, even though he doesn't have elite quickness or speed, but he understands kind of how to set himself up to be in the right positions to get the ball. I mean, he was on fire this past season prior to an ankle injury ending it for him at USC, and that was with some pretty inconsistent quarterback play. I mean, you had Keaton Slovis and Jackson Dart, and there was a third quarterback there as well that I'm blanking on the name of right now. But I mean, there's a lot of guys that kind of cycled in and out. So for Atlanta, who right now doesn't have any receivers really, I mean, Calvin Ridley's not playing this season. Russell Gage is now in Tampa Bay. You need somebody there, and they don't really have anybody right now. And so I think this would be a great fit for their offense. You've got Kyle Pitts, who's able to really kind of make a lot of plays over the middle of the field. Let London go play in the boundary, play in the red zone, and kind of fill in that role in your offense. And I think this just adds up really well for the Falcons down the line. Plus, we've seen Arthur Smith, who's the head coach of the Falcons, have a lot of success with big physical receivers in the past during his time in Tennessee when he had A.J. Brown. So I think we could see him utilize London really well here. All right, number 9, the Seattle Seahawks now on the clock. And this is now the pick they acquired from the Denver Broncos as part of the Russell Wilson trade. They do not have their own first-round pick. That belongs to the Jets, the next pick after this. So this is Seattle now, kind of the start of their rebuild. They don't really have a quarterback right now. Drew Lock is there. Geno Smith is there. So they really don't have a quarterback right now. And I don't quite know the best way to go from here. Offensive tackles in need, corners in need. But I'm actually going to go with an edge rusher here. And that's going to be Travon Walker out of Georgia. I mean, we've seen his draft stock surge. I've seen people putting him in the top 5. I think I just saw Maurice Jones-Drew put him in at number 1 maybe this past week. I'm not quite on the hype train that far, but when you turn on the tape, there's a lot to like. He could drop into coverage. He can rush off the edge. He can play defensive tackle. I mean, that type of versatility is really hard to come by. And by the sounds of it, scouts are all over him. I think for Seattle, after letting Carlos Dunlap go, this just makes a ton of sense. You get somebody in there who's going to be a very productive player with a lot of versatility as you start this rebuild in the post-Russell Wilson era. Because right now, this team has so many holes. Bobby Wagner's gone. Right? There's so much that they need to replace right now. Just go with the best player on the board, and to me, that's Travon Walker. Number 10, the Jets back up on the clock. They grabbed Ahmad Gardner at number 4 in this mock. Now, I think they're going to go to the offensive side of the ball here. They've been in on a couple different receivers, right? They just missed out on Tyreek Hill, who ended up going to the Dolphins. Instead here, I think they go with Garrett Wilson, wide receiver out of Ohio State. Silky smooth route runner, good open field speed, very nice set of hands. There's a lot to like about Garrett Wilson. Not much that you can really nitpick here. He was the top target for C.J. Stroud this past year, playing alongside Chris Olave in a loaded wide receiver room. There's going to be a lot more Ohio State wide receivers that come out. Jackson Smith and Jigba going to be coming out next year. I mean, look for that guy to potentially be a top 10 pick as well. So for the Jets, though, they don't have a true number 1 wide receiver right now. They got Elijah Moore last year, who I really like. I think it's a great fit in that offense, but given the size, I think they need somebody who's going to be able to play out on the outside there, and I think that's exactly what Garrett Wilson brings. Get him a chance to play with Zach Wilson. We could just have the fun Wilson-to-Wilson connection over and over again, hopefully. Now, number 11, we have the Washington Commanders. Still getting used to saying that, honestly. Commanders on the clock. And they could go a number of different directions here. They probably have a couple of needs on defense, but I'm actually going to go with another wide receiver here. I'm going to go with Jameson Williams, wide receiver out of Alabama. Now, I know he has coming off a torn ACL that he suffered in the national championship game against Georgia this year, so that's definitely a concern. That being said, Williams might have been pushing for wide receiver number 1 in this class without the injury. Expectation is he'll make a full recovery. It was in January, so let's say that the 9-month timeline still roughly holds true for these ACL injuries, even though we're seeing guys recover kind of faster and stronger than ever before. I'm going to go with he's probably going to be on the field by October. I don't think Washington is quite in win-now mode, and if they can get a player of Williams' caliber to step in there, play alongside Terry McLaurin, and give Carson Wentz, their new quarterback, a playmaker to work with on the outside, that really fills out this offense very well, in my opinion. So I think it's worth the gamble here, worth the risk, and this is going to be good value for them down the line. Number 12, the Minnesota Vikings. Now, initially I had been mocking edge rushers here to the Vikings, but with the signing of Zadarius Smith, they can kind of turn their attention elsewhere. And for me, that's going to be to corner. I know the Vikings have drafted a tremendous number of corners over the past few years, but whether it's been off the field issues with Jeff Gladney, who's actually back in the NFL now, he signed with the Arizona Cardinals. And then you've got, guys like Mike Hughes, who never quite panned out, Trey Waynes. There's just the list goes on and on for corners that Minnesota has missed out on, unfortunately. So I think they could put a stop to all of that but this is another risky one. Derek Stingley Jr. is the pick for me here, cornerback out of LSU. Coming into the year, there was talk that he might be the top player in this draft, but he didn't really play this season. He had some injuries. There's concern that maybe he wasn't really in it. He didn't opt out of the season, but then he didn't really play much of the season. It didn't really seem like he wanted to be playing much of this season, kind of already onto the NFL. When we saw him in 2019 on that LSU national championship team, I mean, he was the best corner in the country. I mean, it was ridiculous to see what he was doing as a freshman. Sophomore year, there was a little more of, rockiness to that season, but I think the potential is still there for him to be one of the best corners in the NFL at the end of the day. Minnesota doesn't have a great track record of developing those guys, unfortunately, but we'll see maybe if this finally breaks the trend. The talent is higher than any of these guys that they drafted before him. I think he could end up being a steal at number 12 if we see him come anywhere close to the prospect that we saw back in 2019 and even early 2020. Number 13, we now have the Houston Texans back on the clock again, and this is now their pick that they acquired in the Deshaun Watson trade with Cleveland. So we already had them taking Kayvon Thibodeau at number 3. So let's now flip here, and we're going to double up, actually. We're going to go with Jermaine Johnson, who is an edge rusher out of Florida State. And I know this seems a little bit counterintuitive, maybe to go double edge rusher here, but let me explain why. Houston really has nothing on defense right now. They've been letting solid quality players walk each of the past few years, right? Zach Cunningham just was cut. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense what their approach has been on defense. Instead of trying to trade for draft picks, whatever it might be, they've just been letting quality guys walk. With the top couple of receivers off the board already, I don't think they're going to go receiver here. Corners are off the board. Jordan Davis was a real consideration here, but I like Jermaine Johnson a lot. I think he's an elite run defender with room to grow as a pass rusher, and I think if you put those two guys on the outside, you let them go to work, Houston's got a pretty solid offensive line already. They've got Brandon Cooks still there. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but I think there's enough there that you feel like, okay, if maybe they add a wide receiver in the second or third round and you start to kind of fill out the rest of this roster, there's something there. Maybe they'll be able to make a little bit more of a run, especially given how wide open it feels like the AFC South is pretty much every year. The Colts are okay. The Titans are good. The Jaguars obviously are not yet. So Houston has a chance to at least be a little more competitive this year. And if you get 2 edge rushers in a really good edge rusher class, that sets your defense up for a lot of success down the line. Number 14, Baltimore Ravens now on the clock. And this is another one where I struggled a little bit. I thought about Tyler Linderbaum here. I like the guy a lot, center out of Iowa. But instead, I actually went to the other side of the ball, other side of the trenches here. Let's go with Jordan Davis. I think they have a huge need right now for a defensive tackle, even after signing Michael Pierce in Baltimore. And Davis is just, I don't know how to describe him other than just like one of the most insane athletes that I've seen in a really long time. Given the size, given the speed, I don't think we need to really. How often is Jordan Davis going to be running 40 yards down the field in a straight line in the NFL? Pretty much never. That doesn't mean that his 40 time is 4.87, I believe, is not any less impressive. I just don't know if it's super relevant. But I think it just speaks to the overall athleticism that this guy has. I think he could be somebody who can collapse the pocket, stuff the middle in the run. I mean, there's just Baltimore loves to have an elite defense, and if you're going to have an elite defense, go out there and get the best defensive tackle in this class in Jordan Davis and call it a day. I think the Ravens would feel really good about landing him here and kind of moving forward the rest of their draft, looking to plug in some holes. There's going to be interior alignment that they can find in the second or third round to potentially help bolster that line and make sure Lamar Jackson is a little more upright this upcoming season. All right, number 15, the first of 3 picks for the Philadelphia Eagles here. Now, I think they have a really good chance to restock here. I wouldn't be shocked to see them trade away one of these picks to get maybe some future considerations here. when you have 3 first-round picks, it's fine to make all of them, but you can obviously set yourself up for even more future success based on what you do with them and how you use them. So, but the first one here, I'm going to go Devin Lloyd. I know that this front office never values linebacker, but I think that's really starting to hurt them. That defense needs an upgrade at linebacker in the worst way, and Devin Lloyd is an athletic Swiss Army knife who can move all over the formation. You could play him, I think, at really any of those 3 off-ball linebacker spots there for the Eagles. And I just love the guy. He's been one of my favorite prospects in the last few years. I've been tracking him since 2019 when I was putting on film of Bradley and and he jumped out to me then. And so I've been waiting a really long time for him to come into the league. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. He's even got some pass rush ability. There's a lot to like about him here. I don't want to quite put him in the same category as Micah Parsons, but I don't think he's that far off from where Parsons was coming out as a prospect. Now, I don't know that it'll have the same impact that Parsons did either, but there's a lot to like about what I really love. Devin Lloyd is the bottom line. Number 16, the Eagles still on the clock, so they got back-to-back picks here. We're going to go with Chris Olave here, wide receiver out of Ohio State. I think that they need to continue to add weapons to this offense. I know they've spent a ton of, it's almost like the Vikings with corners. They've spent a ton of draft capital on wide receivers in recent years, but it hasn't quite always worked out, right? Jalen Reagor was definitely the wrong choice, especially with Justin Jefferson there. Devonta Smith, fantastic rookie year. I think he's going to be a phenomenal pro. Great value for where they got him as well last year. But the thing is here, I just think that they need to get somebody else to play alongside him. Jalen Hurts is the guy right now in Philly, and if you really want to know if he's the guy, you got to give him weapons to work with. So I think Olave here, he's got great speed, take the top off of defense. He could stretch the field in that regard, and he's got some underneath ability as well. There's some room for him to work and develop more, I think, underneath and just kind of overall in his route running and his game. But there's plenty to like there that makes you think he's going to be an impact rookie with a high upside. So for me, this is a no-brainer. Go out and get another receiver here for Jalen Hurts to work with. Number 17 now, the Los Angeles Chargers on the clock. They just missed out on the playoffs last year. And Chargers' right side of their offensive line is a mess right now. They desperately need a right tackle, and it just so happens that a tackle is on the board here. Charles Cross, I've thought of him as more of a left tackle, but challenged by a couple of people on Reddit recently. Hat tip to NFL_draft on Reddit, which is one of my favorite subreddits to spend some time in. But they were saying, this could really work out well. It's a pass-heavy offense here, and I have to say that I agree. Charles Cross is coming out of Mississippi State. He played a tremendous number of pass snaps in his time there because he was playing for Mike Leach, and all Mike Leach does is throw the football. So he's really, really polished as a pass rusher. There's some things that he still needs to improve, but he's got tons of experience there. The run game is where we kind of more of an unknown at this point. We don't really know what to expect from him, but I think he would fit really well with Los Angeles and continue to build a really strong offensive line in front of Justin Herbert. You need to protect the guy. You've already got Rashawn Slater on the left side. Honestly, might be one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL already. And so for me, that's just, take him. You have bookends at tackle there, and Justin Herbert's going to sleep a little bit better heading into day 2 of the draft. Number 18 here, we got our second quarterback coming off the board, and this is the New Orleans Saints. Now, they have Jameis Winston back for this season, and Winston could very well mean that the Saints are not going to go quarterback, but I don't really know if that's going to be the case. He just tore his ACL last year. I expect he'll come back, and he'll probably be fine. But Winston was good but not great last year for the Saints. He was a fine stopgap solution, but the fact that New Orleans was in on Deshaun Watson, I think indicates to me that they really want to find somebody else other than Winston long term. So I think they go with Kenny Pickett here. To me, he's a super safe, rock-solid draft prospect. He's got a pretty solid arm. The hand size is definitely a little bit of a concern. I think one of the things that prevents me from really putting him a little bit higher here in this mock draft, I could, if the hand size wasn't an issue and he had a little bit of a stronger arm, Seattle at number 9 could certainly be an option. There are a couple of teams in the teens that maybe would roll the dice on Kenny Pickett before now, but I think Pickett, fits really well into what Sean Payton wants to do. He's a rhythmic thrower. He's athletic. That's one of the things I think that gets lost. He's actually got very good speed. He's got solid footwork. He's, to me, the most pro-ready prospect of this class at this point. I'm still doing work on all these guys and all of that, trying to listen in, hear, I can hear, not really watching the pro day stuff, more listening to what comes out of the pro day. I think that's much more useful when you're trying to peg where these guys will go and how they really match up as draft prospects. So for me, pick it to the Saints. This is a great pick for them, and I think somebody that could take over and give them a lot of stability at the quarterback position, something they've been lacking ever since Drew Brees retired. Number 20, I'm skipping a pick. Number 19, we have Devonta Wyatt coming off here, and this is the Eagles' third pick. This is where I really could see them trading down. If there's somebody who wants to get at the Steelers, worried that maybe they'll take a quarterback, or trying to grab a wide receiver here, offensive lineman, a couple different areas we could go. But if the Eagles keep this pick, I think Devonta Wyatt is the pick. He is one of my favorite prospects in this draft class. Just a super high motor, just relentless player, and you can line him up anywhere, really, I feel like, along the defensive line. I think for the Eagles, he would slot in really nicely as one of their defensive tackles here, play him alongside Fletcher Cox, and you get a pass rusher, you get somebody who's physical enough to play, strong against the run. I love Devonta Wyatt. I think he's going to be somebody he tested super well at the Combine, too. I mean, it just oozes athleticism, pretty much every Georgia player tested well at the Combine. So, but I think he would be a really good fit here for the Eagles. Number 20, Tyler Linderbaum coming off the board finally here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this would be a great upgrade for them on the interior of their offensive line. I know they've put a couple of resources in free agency to try and make this group better. But if they really are serious about building this team into something better than it was last year, they need to address the offensive line. Linderbaum, to me, is somebody that, yes, there's some size concerns here. I've read all about them. I've seen that. I understand that. But when you put on the tape band, he's one of the best center prospects that I've seen in quite a long time. He's super athletic, unbelievable in space. He's got a nastiness to his game where he finishes blocks through. And I think that there's something in that Mike Tomlin really likes. Now, without any trades here, I think this is what the Steelers do. It would not shock me to see Pittsburgh pull the trigger, move up, and try and take a quarterback in this draft. Just at number 20, I'm not in on Matt Corral. Sorry, I'll get into that maybe in a different podcast, but I don't think he's worth it, the number 20 pick here. With the top two quarterbacks off the board, I think you solidify that offensive line, and you move forward and look for maybe a Carson Strong, a Desmond Ridder, a Sam Howell in the second round, if you're really looking for a draft prospect to work with and develop. Number 21, we have the New England Patriots here, and this is where I think we see the next corner come off the board. Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson. To me, this is all about projection here. I think we're going to end up seeing somebody who's got great physical tools. He's pretty quick on the outside, understands how to play the position pretty well. Great body mechanics as well. You watch him adjust to some of these balls in the air. The only problem is that he's been a little bit nicked up. He didn't get a chance to run to the Combine. Didn't get a chance to really do any of that pre-draft stuff. So it's been disappointing. I think he would have actually boosted his draft stock if he had a chance to participate in all those events. That being said, for New England, who just lost J.C. Jackson, go out, get yourself a corner, and I think he could turn it into a true number one corner on the outside down the line. Number 22, the Green Bay Packers in the pick that they acquired from the Devontae Adams trade from the Raiders, and I'm going to take a receiver here. Shocking. I know the Packers don't do this very often, but my goodness, they just lost Marquez Valdez-Scantling as well. They need receivers. I mean, I know they brought back Aaron Rodgers, but he's got to have someone to throw the ball to. So, to me, this is where Treylon Burks comes off the board. I know he didn't run very well, but when you turn on the film, he's got a great physical presence, and he's somebody who's able to make contested catches down the field. He could actually even run some of those flare routes, those screen routes, kind of get the ball, pick up 7-8 yards, stuff like that when he's playing against off coverage. So I think he's pretty versatile. Yes, I think there's a little bit more limitation to his game based on what we saw from the physical testing, and he did disappear at times. There were definitely a few games this season for Arkansas where he just really didn't do a whole lot. So, yeah, I think there's definitely some room for him to improve there. But I think this is a pretty solid get for the Packers at this point in a draft where they need to come out with a couple more playmakers for Aaron Rodgers to work with. I honestly, with 2 second-round picks as well, I wouldn't be surprised if they went back and drafted another receiver in the second round just to continue to try and fill out this receiver room, get in young, inexpensive players for Aaron Rodgers to grow with in the next couple of years as they try and pursue a Super Bowl at the end of Rodgers' tenure with the team. Number 23, we have the Arizona Cardinals here. And this finally, to me, is where I think we're going to see Kenyon Green come off the board. At the beginning of the year, I thought he might be a top 10 prospect. He didn't play quite up to that level in his last season with Texas A&M. But I think for the Cardinals, they need to find somebody to man one of those guard spots. They lost both their guards from last season. They have the tackles pretty much set at this point, and Rodney Hudson in the middle. But I think if you're going to see what Kyler Murray really has to offer, you need to protect him. When he's been healthy, Kyler Murray has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. The problem is that he always seems to get just a little bit nicked up towards the end of the year. Now, some of that is just because he's a mobile, athletic quarterback with a slight frame. But I think you got to give him as much protection as possible here. To me, this is a great fit of need and value coming together for the Cardinals and getting a chance to add a really solid player that will make their team better from day one in the later stages of this first round. Number 24, the Dallas Cowboys. They've been surprisingly quiet in free agency so far. Kind of a shock, honestly, that they haven't done more. And this is where I think we're going to see George Karlaftis come off the board. In this scenario here, we've seen already 4 different edge rushers go in the top 13 picks. I think this is the next guy to come off the board. Karlaftis is really quick off the edge. He's got really solid speed. He's got to work a little bit more on, I think, some of the fine-tuning of actually playing the edge in the NFL, getting out there and making sure that he keeps contained. And I think just working through some of the different things that he's supposed to do as an edge rusher at the NFL level. But the physical tools are there, and I really think this would be a good fit, especially after the Cowboys loss. Randy Gregory, you can put him on the outside there for Dallas and let him go to work. Number 25, we have the Buffalo Bills on the clock, and this is, I think, a really good spot for them to take a corner. Now, I've got Trent McDuffie going here from Washington. I know there's a little bit of concern with his length. He didn't measure in quite as big as people were hoping for. I think just a shade under 5'11" when he measured at the combine. But you turn on the film, this guy plays so much bigger than that. And I think this is a really good spot. To me, he screams really high-end corner number 2, which is great for Buffalo because they already have Tre'Davious White. Hopefully he's back fully healthy after missing the majority of last season with an injury. So if he's back and you've got McDuffie on the back end as well, I think this is going to be a really good tandem for them to work with. I still love Dane Jackson, who they have there as well. Corner they took out of Pittsburgh a couple years back. So there's, I think, a pretty good secondary there if you add somebody who can play on the outside. And you know what? That's what you need right now when you're going up against some of these elite offenses in the AFC. As we saw last year, I mean, they added Von Miller in free agency, which is great. Now you need to add to the secondary because when there's whatever it is, 13, 17 seconds left on the clock, and you're playing against the Kansas City Chiefs, you need to be able to close out the game. And in order to do that, you need to have some playmakers on defense. Alrighty, so that's number 25. Number 26, the Tennessee Titans on the clock here. And I think Trevor Penning should be the pick here for the Titans. Reason for that, they have a huge opening right now on the right side of their line. They tried a couple years ago to get Isaiah Wilson to fill that in at an offensive tackle out of Georgia. That did not work out. They've been kind of going with we're going to have a stopgap solution here for a couple years now. And I think this is where they kind of finally have to end that and give Ryan Tannehill a little more protection. Penning, coming out of Northern Iowa, definitely going to be a learning curve, making the jump from FCS to the NFL. But we've seen a lot of players do it recently. I think more so than ever, these guys are ready to make that jump. He had a fantastic Senior Bowl as well. I think he would end up sliding in very nicely here towards the end of the first round. Number 27, Zion Johnson coming off the board here. And Boston College interior lineman. The Buccaneers lost Ali Marpet. He kind of shockingly retired at the age of 28. So I think for them, this is a chance for them to find a new left guard. Tom Brady needs protection, right, to be successful in the NFL. One of the things that we've seen is, I mean, the blueprint the Giants laid out there, right, when they beat him in back-to-back Super Bowls. Well, I shouldn't say back-to-back, in 2 different Super Bowls. They got to him by just rushing 4 guys. They didn't have to blitz. They were able to get a pass rush going that way. Now, the Giants had fantastic defensive linemen that made that possible, but the Patriots, the Buccaneers need to be able to keep that offensive line in one of the top units in the league. They've got Tristan Wirfs, right? They've got, they went out and traded for Shaq Mason. They've still got Ryan Jensen in the middle. I think you get Zion Johnson here. That allows them to really fill out this line and give Brady the protection he's going to need as he comes back here at the age of 44 for another season in the NFL. Number 28, the Green Bay Packers back on the clock here, their original pick in this draft. I think this is where we're going to see Darian Kinnard, offensive tackle out of Kentucky, come off the board. The Packers quietly have a pretty big need at right tackle. They've been running through a couple of guys in recent years, and you could even argue at left tackle as well. David Bakhtiari has not been healthy the last 2 seasons, was not able to really get back on the field this past year after recovering from an injury sustained in 2020. So there's definitely some concern there. I think for the Packers, you've got to find somebody who's going to be able to play in there. He's a little raw, there's no question about that, coming from Kentucky, but he's got super long arms, very physical, be a great run blocker as well, which I think Matt LaFleur would love to have, especially when you've got Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in that backfield. To me, this is a great pick for the Packers, somebody that really would be competing for that job from day one at the right side. You could bump him inside to guard. That would be a real shame to me, given the fact that he's got such long arms. I think you got to give him a chance at tackle here and let him see what he can do. Number 29, the Kansas City Chiefs, in the pick that they acquired by trading away Tyreek Hill from the Dolphins. We're going to go with Jahan Dotson here from Penn State. To me, great wide receiver, a little bit undersized, I understand that, but they're going to have some size on the outside. You've got Juju Smith-Schuster there. You've got Travis Kelce. I think this is a player who, this is kind of what the Chiefs have lacked a lot in recent years, is a guy who could be a possession receiver, who's got some good speed. He could take the top off when you need him to. Really good hands as well. One of the best, I think, catches the football in this entire draft class. Just, you don't see him drop the ball very often. Very productive at Penn State, and I think would be a really solid addition to this Chiefs offense here. Now, number 30, the Chiefs still on the clock, second team with back-to-back picks in this first round. To me, this is where David Ojabo goes. The Chiefs definitely need to find another edge rusher. I know the concern with Ojabo is that he just tore his Achilles really not even a couple of days ago, really, it feels like at this point. It's been longer, but he tore his Achilles, unfortunately, at the Michigan Pro Day, testing for scouts. The scene there, just super depressing to watch, the whole thing, whether it was nobody really going to check on him initially and the fact that he's just laying on the ground. But I think he's still got first-round talent. I don't think that he should slide out of the first round. I think getting him at the back end of the first round here for the Chiefs and getting somebody who he's going to play this year. It won't be right away, but it might be late November, early December as the Chiefs are trying to make that playoff push and looking for an edge rusher to go out there and compete with Frank Clark and Chris Jones along that front seven. To me, this is a really solid pick for them and somebody who's got unbelievable potential down the line. You get a situational pass rusher with elite traits who can develop over time and become, I think, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL when it's all said and done. Number 31, we had the Cincinnati Bengals here on the clock, and for a long time I just had said offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. Well, the Bengals actually addressed that in free agency. They signed Lyle Collins. You go out and get Ted Karras. I mean, they've really filled in this offensive line pretty well. It wouldn't be a terrible idea to still go out and draft maybe an interior lineman here at some point in this draft. But I think for now, let's see them go to the defensive side of the ball. Travis Jones, defensive tackle out of UConn, had a really solid Senior Bowl, tested incredibly well at the Combine, and did really well at UConn. I mean, you don't see too many great players coming out of UConn these days, but I think this is one of those things where the guy's kind of flown under the radar because he played on a bad football team, but the talent is there, and I think, I wouldn't be a surprise. At number 32, the Detroit Lions are on the clock now, and that's the pick they acquired from the Los Angeles Rams as part of the Matt Stafford trade. And to me, with them already taking an edge rusher at number 2 in Aiden Hutchinson, to me right now, I think this is where they go out. I think they take Quay Walker here. I think, to me, this is a really good fit for them. He's a great coverage linebacker who's got good size, physicality. I love Quay Walker. I think he's somebody that could sneak his way into the end of the first round. For the Lions, this is somebody who can step in and be an impact player on their defense. You really reshape the defense with Hutchinson and Walker both coming in together in my mind here. I thought about going a wide receiver here, but they also pick again at number 34, so the Lions can go receiver there. Maybe that's George Pickens, Christian Watson, whatever, and what have you. I don't think the Jaguars are going to take one at 33 either. I know you can't always plan on that, but in this case, I think you could see them taking Quay Walker and then grabbing a receiver there at number 34. So that's going to do it for the first round. That's it. First round is in the books. Obviously, a little bit of a different approach, like I said. Maybe not quite some of the stuff that you've been hearing from across the NFL. But, my goal here is not to just regurgitate what you've been hearing out there, what you've been seeing out there in mock drafts and stuff like that. This is my own film study. This is my own research and stuff like that. I don't pretend to be an expert, but this is what I enjoy doing. So, having some fun with it. Let me know what you think. There are some picks that, guys that slid way too far, guys that went way too early, teams that didn't need to draft that player, or can't believe this team passed on that player. Let me know. Feel free to get at me. You can leave some comments on the YouTube channel. You can always comment on any of the posts that I have on aftermathsports.com, the website that I run. And feel free to get at me on social media as well. I'm at cmclean84. You can follow along the Aftermath at Aftermath Sports on Twitter. We have a Facebook page as well, Aftermath Sports there. So great, tons of places to reach out, get in touch with me, have some conversation about the NFL draft as we get closer to draft day. But thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, to this first episode back of Draft Season Never Ends. I really appreciate it. Remember to rate, review, subscribe, download, all those different things, share with your friends, tell people about it. I always appreciate that type of thing. And hopefully this will be something I'll be doing a lot more of. Can't wait. Draft season is basically here, right? I mean, this is the pre-draft process. We're seeing pro days, the combine's done, Senior Bowl's done, all that type of stuff. Now the ramp up to the draft truly begins. Silly season now. You're going to hear a lot of things come out in the next month or so about where players are going to go, stories, different things like that. Some of it's smoke screen, some of it's real. I remember last year being like, oh my God, there's no way that Peyton Turner is going to go in the first round. Well, lo and behold, he went in the first round to the Saints. So, you never know which of that stuff is smoke screen and which of that stuff is real. It's hard to sort through, but going to be a ton of focus on the draft coming up. I will do my best to help you guys navigate through all of it and just have some fun as we get geared up for the 2022 NFL draft in Las Vegas. So thanks everyone for tuning in. You guys will hear from me again next week.